Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Joe Kaiser, writer for the Illinois Policy Institute, on this edition of Rising. And Joe, this is a story we've been following since the 2017 spring elections that saw an end of an era in the Algonquin Township Highway Department, where the Miller family was defeated, and I do mean the family was defeated, not just Bob Miller, the highway commissioner. It was defeated by Andrew Gosser after some sunlight was shined into the operation of the Algonquin Highway Township, the Algonquin Township Highway Department. And this family that's lorded over that department for 50 years was found to have $400,000 worth of payroll going to Bob Miller and family members, in addition to using taxpayer funds at the township level as sort of a personal slush fund for tickets to shows and to Disneyland and for new clothes and for meals and adult beverages and the like, all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't think would have much to do with maintaining a few miles of township road. So the happy ending, or the happy midpoint ending, was Bob Miller being defeated and voters holding him accountable. The real question is, what about the malfeasance, the conversion of taxpayer funds for personal use? That's illegal. So are we going to have a prosecution of Bob Miller? And we got our answer this week.
Yeah, McHenry County State's attorney found that there wasn't enough evidence to bring forth criminal charges against Bob Miller. He did find that he sees systemic problems in township government that, I guess, lead to these things. And Miller's proof. I mean, after he was ousted from his position in Algonquin Township, he started what he calls a local government consulting business, and is now doing consulting work in Nunda Township, up in McHenry Township. So, I mean, there's obviously a systemic problem, and local government consolidation is a big issue that should be being pursued in Springfield. But it's kind of odd, given the mountain of evidence, that the McHenry County State's attorney couldn't find enough to bring forth a criminal charge.
Well, consolidation or not consolidation, I mean, you shouldn't allow, this shouldn't go on.
Sure.
I mean, there's no reason, it doesn't go on everywhere. It probably goes on in more places than we'd care to admit. But this is sort of a microcosm of everything that's wrong with Illinois. Not only that he was feasting on taxpayer funds, $400,000, small little township, small little highway township department, and $400,000 in salaries and all the money they were spending for personal enjoyment, taxpayers' money. And it's funny, too, because the McHenry County State's attorney, I mean, I appreciate that he's not happy with how the township department was being operated, but Patrick Kennelly described townships as overrun with incompetence, guile, and impropriety. Well, if there was impropriety, that's sort of a synonym for illegality, so that sort of demands a prosecution. If based on just what we've seen and what we've reported on McHenry County Times, one of my newspapers, he was using taxpayer funds for personally. You can't do that. I don't know of any reimbursements, and even if there were reimbursements, you still can't do that. You can't reimburse after the fact. You steal something, you return it, you're still potentially guilty of theft. So it's disquieting. And then the second piece of it, like you say, is after parachuting out with all of his years of service, and he's going to have a handsome pension, then these other township highway departments hire him as a consultant. What the hell is wrong with these people?
It's insulting to taxpayers. Now, township government's a relatively small portion of a property tax bill, but it's still a portion of it. And also, when you have a family like Miller's who's gives all his family members high price positions within the department, he's spending money on alcohol, Disneyland tickets, women's clothing, all these things. It's just insulting to some of the most overburdened taxpayers in the state, in McHenry County, one of the most high tax counties in the country. And then you have, like I said, Nunda Township's hiring Bob Miller for his services. Andrew Rosencrantz, who's the son-in-law of Bob Miller, now has a full-time position in Wakanda Township with a pension and benefits. It's insulting how the Miller family and some of these other township politicians are kind of using their taxpayers as ATM machines for their personal benefit.
Well, and the other thing, too, is, you think ruling class politicians and you want to look at the federal level, you want to look at the Chicago Democrats in charge of the state and in charge of the city. They're the imperious ruling class politicians. It turns out, in many cases, you need to turn your sights locally, because these individuals in McHenry County, which is a conservative county, not something you can say about a lot of counties in Illinois, particularly Chicago metro area, they're acting the same way that the worst Chicago Democrat is acting.
Absolutely, and this is township government's kind of where a lot of people get their start and then rise up the ranks. And these guys, Bob Miller, the Nunda Township Road Commissioner, Mike Lesbrance, Jim Condon, McHenry Township Road Commissioner, these are guys that are active in their local Republican parties. I mean, these are guys that are supposed to be the party of smaller government. They're supposed to be advocating for cleaning up the state, and they're operating at some of the worst behavior at the local level.
Because nobody is qualified to help them run their township highway departments other than Bob Miller and Son. Because I've heard some of their responses like, well, these are experts in the field, and this is the best talent available. Right. And this is also a family that has this cloud of corruption over it. And maybe, oh, by the way, local officials there, if you can't get satisfaction from your local state's attorney, this could be a federal case. I would refer the file to 219 South Dearborn and see if they want to do a little cleaning up of McHenry County for the local officials. But the idea that no one could do a better job or a commensurate job than Bob Miller and his family, even shrouded over with a cloud of corruption. So we have to go with them. That's the only choice we have. It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a fraud, and it's fascinating that people think, well, it's fascinating in one sense that people think they can get away with this fraud. It's fascinating in another sense that they do get away with the fraud.
It is, and if there aren't going to be criminal repercussions for something like this to hold them accountable, you'd hope voters are paying attention to this and can react. I know this isn't like a very sexy election to get involved in and know what's going on. But then also you have a guy, Bob Anderson in McHenry Township. This is one of the townships that's been very been definitely guilty of misuse of taxpayer money, working to consolidate. David McSweeney, who we had on earlier in the show, has been taking up this issue in Springfield. There's got to be some way to hold these guys accountable, and the first step is just paying attention to it and seeing what they're doing.